Okay, Ryan, awesome. Let's go ahead and get started. And as people come in, they are welcome to. So I am super thrilled for today's Privacy Exchange Community Show and Tell series with our special guest, John Cavanaugh. John is the executive director and privacy evangelist at the Plunk Foundation, which is an organization dedicated to promoting digital data privacy for women, children, veterans, and folks from marginalized communities. During our chat today with John, we're going to learn all about the Plunk Foundation's efforts to enhance digital privacy and literacy for vulnerable communities. So we'll spend about 25 minutes together, folks. First, John and I will have a quick chat, and then we will open it up to audience Q&A. We will be recording the first session, so just me and John chatting, and then we'll turn off the recording for the Q&A, so feel free to speak freely in the group. As a reminder, all of the information we share today is for general information purposes only. It's not legal advice, never legal advice. If you need legal advice, contact your own attorney. They're going to do you a way better job than either of us because we're not lawyers in the first place. So with that disclaimer behind us, let's hop in. John, are you ready?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. So John, first question for you. The Plunk Foundation, as I mentioned, is an organization that's dedicated to promoting digital data privacy for women, children, veterans, and folks from marginalized communities. You have a powerful origin story of why you started this and how you got to where you are today. Can you share a little bit of the history and how you came to be where you are?
Yeah, it was super unconventional. When I was 19 in college, I built this really terrible website that barely worked, but it was to connect students to one another, sort of like the old school Facebook. And it grew like to 10,000 users within the first month. And it was even like functional on a cell phone. So it was like really bad. But it solved a need. And I worked with a team and hired people, got grant funding, and we were selling it across the Midwest to different universities as a software as a service platform. And we weren't collecting any data, really. We were just providing a platform for students to connect, and it helped with retention rates at universities. But it came to a point where we needed to raise between like 50 to $100 million. And we were looking at all sorts of investors who kept asking the same question. What data are you collecting? We want to we want our return on investment sooner. So what data can you provide? How can we, take all of this information, because students tend to have terrible spending habits, and we can push ads to them and mix in sentiment analysis to find stressful times like exam weeks and things like that. This was right as around that time, people from 18 to 25 in the United States were dying from higher rates of suicide than car accidents. It like overtook. So it felt really wrong to do that. So me and my team, we talked it out. We refused. They offered 14 million just to buy the company outright, and we just destroyed the IP and did some research to figure out how do we build like sustainable technology that doesn't invade people's privacy. And it turned out that building a nonprofit is probably the best way to do it, because when I die tomorrow, if there are people that replace me, the government still has to uphold the original articles that are written. So I think that's the best way to go about it. In addition to building technology, we're also reaching out to organizations and educating like nonprofits such as women's shelters on how to better protect data, and then reaching out to individuals as a grassroots movement, which makes us different than like the Mozilla Foundation or EFF or a lot of framework-based organizations.
I just want to stress like how amazing it is that you were faced with this big choice, $14 million to, as a young person, what were you, 19? 19 years
Yeah,
old?
at that point I felt like 23, 24. Yeah,
Okay,
because it hit for a
still,
couple of years.
like that's like jackpot money. And that you had such a strong sense of self and sense of duty to other people that you walked away from a life-changing amount. I'm assuming that's a life-changing amount of money. It would be a life.
In Ohio, that's like stupid money, because it would be like seven between me and the other person, be about 7 million each. But look, I was having fun and I enjoyed it, and I didn't have debt from college, so I'm like, I'll be fine, on my next adventure. And yeah, there wasn't too much to worry about or like think that heavily. It was not even like a debate. It was like me and my co-founder like, okay, sure, next, whatever.
Yeah, I just really think that's remarkable, and I want to thank you for choosing us instead of the money. And going as far as to destroy the IP so that folks wouldn't be able to use what you did and, sell students things when they were stressed out or
Yeah.
amplify mental health issues that were, already not being taken care of, what have you. But I just really think your origin story is worth spending the, few minutes talking about because I think you're just remarkable, John. Okay, let's learn more about the foundation. So I'd love to know a bit more about the challenges that the constituents you serve face when it comes to data privacy issues and the digital divide. Can you speak more about that?
Yeah, so I've been very, very fortunate to have a team of 37 PhDs, all professors, mostly from the University of Cincinnati. And what has been really cool is I'm learning from them about how to approach things. And I did that on purpose because I've read several books, but like Race After Technology by Ruha Benjamin is really, really good. But it's essentially like when we create something or when we try to educate people, we come with our own baggage and it's hard to see from their point of view. And so you need experts who really study these things or integrate it in the community. So that's been a big thing. The main thing that we're working on, it's a concept called co-design. And that's before going into a community, we work with the stakeholders and we ask like, hey, how can we help? Can we help? Like, can we help is probably the best question. Like, is what we're doing relevant to you? Are there concerns in the community? And then working and listening before introducing any types of training. So there's an immigrant community of like 500 Guatemalans in northern Kentucky, which is like 5 minutes away from Cincinnati. It's like right across, it's like the same greater area. And they are more concerned about being educated on why privacy, like how privacy is invading people. But there's an organization or there's a area called Avondale, which is 87% Black and median income is like very low. It's the lowest in all of Cincinnati. They are acutely aware of privacy harms, but they feel powerless, and they sense a lot of like government surveillance and policing and those various things. So they're more concerned about what steps can I take to make my life a little safer and my family a little safer. So it's really based on a need by need basis. With nonprofit organizations, it's the same. Like you may have a healthcare organization, of course, that's going to be HIPAA. So like the various needs are really, really unique, and you have to address it as such.
That is fascinating and super interesting. So I'm like curious, like what does this look like on the ground? So with
Sure.
the community of Guatemalan immigrants that
Mhm.
have just come to Kentucky, like what sort of services do you provide them? Is someone from the like do you go and like educate their volunteer organizers or do you have like classes? Like what does this look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's about 17 immigrant-based organizations or Latino-based organizations that we're partnering with. And then I speak Spanish, and so does another constituent who's an expert in co-design. So we first strategize with them, and we're in the strategizing phase right now. So we're working with these 17 organizations. They have office space, they have the ability to bring people together. And the first thing that we're figuring out is like, okay, what is a good delivery and method of delivery, right? Like for some people, they can't make it to a gathering or they need transportation or something that's just like, hey, we're going to miss 90% of the population if we do something like this. Others would easily sign up for an email service where it's just like, hey, for the next 30 days, these are going to be privacy tips for you. There are a few school systems as well that we're working with that we would work with the Hispanic. They have like, classes for Hispanic kids, like English as second language to share that stuff and even have flyers that they can bring home to their parents. So it's really unique, depending on the org.
Fascinating. I had never even thought about bringing a flyer home for someone else. That's a wonderful way to contribute. message.
Mhm.
Thanks for sharing those examples. So I know that nonprofits tend to have small budgets but huge wish lists.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what would you like to pursue as an organization if time, money, and resources and support, all align? Like what's the big hairy goal that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, we're actually on the first step, but the idea is to build like the first privacy economy in the US. I am working with the University of Cincinnati, and we just got we're have something in the works. That's the most I can say about that. But to eventually, our goal is to have a building where we can bring in any privacy organization to come here. We would be the research arm that informs new privacy policies and new privacy technology. We would also have outreach that's kind of train the trainer outreach. So like women's shelters, people who volunteer there need continuing educational credits. So we would be in charge of that curriculum when it comes to privacy in those areas, especially like even like foster care, as Ryan was in, various things like that. Then we secondly want to build open source technology that's end-to-end encrypted mostly, that has, if you're we're doing AI related things as federated learning as an example, and that we just get better at what these privacy practices are so that the default, like we don't have to just use second rate apps if we want privacy. That's the whole idea.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So an alternative to crap applications is what it sounds
Yeah.
like.
I
Amazing.
never heard that. That's awesome. Yeah, yeah.
Favorite word. One of them.
I was just
Um,
on Signal yesterday with some friends, and I was like getting them on Signal, and it was just like difficult, like the way that WhatsApp wouldn't be, you know? Like it's
yeah,
pretty easy, but it's just not as good. And you just know deep down, like, okay, my friends know this is not as good, and they're not going to use it as much. And it's not going to be the default, and it sucks.
yeah, yeah. I love that. So one final question before we open it up to the audience. What support can people, in the wider community here provide to you, people who just want to help or be involved? What can we do?
Yeah, well, we have an incredible team of volunteers and advisors. So people with any privacy expertise, as we're building out, we're also doing privacy programs for nonprofits. So as we're building that out, your support in that way would be awesome as a volunteer. Donations are fantastic. And just spreading the word or like having me on a podcast or this type of thing that we're doing here casually is awesome. I love doing speaking engagements, and I found it to be really helpful in boosting the visibility of what we're doing.
Wonderful. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and turn off the recording and open this up to audience Q&A.